On today's episode of Chronicles of a Nigerian Woman, I'll be reading Bosola's story. I am 53 and I graduated with a BSc in education 2 years ago. This is by far my biggest personal milestone achievement, and it means so much to me in spite of my age. This is my story. I was 18 and I had just finished secondary school when I met Joseph, my husband. He was 20 and he had finished about 2 years prior. We both come from financially challenged backgrounds and were born in a village in Kwara State. I was the second child of my parents, but the first girl, and he was the firstborn of his mother, who was the third wife of his father, of whom he was the sixth child. Joseph had no hope of going further in his education. I, on the other hand, had been lucky. My father's cousin had taken me to live with her since I was in Form 3. And even though I assisted her at home, she was kind to me. She sent me to a good private school in Ilorin. I was at home visiting my parents, having finished my secondary school while waiting for my results. The plan was for me to go back so that I could go to the university. That was when I met Joseph, who had grown up in the village, but was determined to make something of his life. I was enamored by him. His dreams were big and his plans were certain. He was very unlike many of the boys I had gone to school with, who only seemed to have their minds on fecal things. One thing led to another between us, and I found myself pregnant. I had known him for less than 2 months, and I was pregnant. I should have felt shame, but gingered by his boldness, I felt invincible. He assured me that he would take care of us and that I would fulfill my dream of getting my degree and starting my own school. I stood up to my parents, who were thoroughly disappointed in me. I was the star child of the family, and they had high hopes for where I would go. Obviously, the university plans my aunt had for me were gone. My stay at home was miserable. My parents were constantly expressing their thoughts about my situation and how I sacrificed my future for a boy who had nothing to offer me. I was about 4 months gone when Joseph came up with the grand plan that we should elope to Lagos. According to him, one of his older siblings lived there and we could manage ourselves until we settled. I was scared because the stories I heard about Lagos were harsh and intimidating, but he convinced me that it was a land of opportunities where we could make more money than we could dream of. So I agreed. Early one morning, I gathered a few of my clothes into a bag I could easily carry, and before anyone in the house woke up, I snuck out to meet Joseph, who was waiting at a prearranged place. We headed for the park, and he paid for us to go to Lagos. I don't know how he got the money, but he had told me he would, and he did. I left my parents a note telling them that I had left with Joseph for Lagos and that we would make our lives there. I told them not to worry about me and that I would make them proud. As I write this story, the irony of my words is not lost on me. The memories of 35 years flood my mind in a flash, and all I can do is shake my head at my naivety. As the young people say today, Lagos showed me shege. When we arrived at Joseph's brother's house, of course, we were not received with open arms. They had not seen each other in about 7 years, and the man had a young family with 2 children. He was certainly not prepared to take in 2 extra mouths, especially not a pregnant woman. By Joseph's standards, he felt his brother was rich and comfortable, but by the wealth I had been exposed to, I knew his brother was a hustling man managing to eke out a living to feed his family. The man worked as a clerical officer in a bank. and his wife ran a local booker in the area. She was a nice woman, and she prevailed on her husband to let me stay. But Joseph had to find his own way after 2 days. That was how I started helping her in her business, for which she paid me a small stipend. It was extremely generous of her, considering the fact that I was eating from the booker and living in their house. Joseph started by working at construction sites, and many times he slept at those sites until he was able to save up to rent a room, which I moved into with him when I was about 7 months gone. My sister-in-law had taken me to register for antenatals at a government hospital, and when I eventually had the baby, she helped me for a few days by coming to our home to help me bathe the baby until I got the hang of things and could sort myself out. Joseph continued his hustle until our daughter was about 3 months, and then he decided to go back to school. I started a small business selling food by the roadside in our area. I woke up early to cater for those going to work in the mornings, and soon I was doing quite well. Most of the income from the business went towards supporting Joseph through school and our bills at home. It was tough, but I was happy to do it, knowing that when Joseph finished and got a job, it would be his turn to support me. By the time he finished his 4-year course in secretarial studies, we had another daughter and I was pregnant with a 3rd child. We had moved out of the single-room apartment and lived in a room and parlor, funded mostly by the business I was running. Joseph made some money doing tutorials and assignments for junior students in school, but it was my income that was consistent. And it did not matter to me because I was doing it for our family and our future. After graduation, he was posted to Oyo for his NYSC. Thankfully, it was not too far away, and he saved most of his earnings in the period because he wanted to take professional exams that would boost his career. It meant I was completely responsible for myself and the children throughout the period. And it was during that time that I had our 3rd child. When I had the baby, he came on weekends for about a month, and he asked his mother to come and stay with us to help me. I resumed business once the baby was a month old, and I took care of all of us and his mother. Joseph came back to Lagos after he finished his service, and he got a secretarial job at a law firm, and at the same time, he was taking his professional exams to become a chartered secretary. It was only a matter of time before I began to feel inadequate beside him. Because of the school I went to, my diction was quite good, but Joseph's exposure at the university and in the workplace soon made him much more polished than I was. His ambition also drove him to keep refining himself, and soon his dressing and way of speaking changed. I, on the other hand, was a canteen owner with a secondary school certificate. But my feeling of inadequacy was the least of the challenges I would face. What do you think happened to Bosola? Stay tuned for next week's episode to find out. Remember to like this, to share it, and definitely remember to subscribe to my channel. Till I come your way again next time. Ciao!